knowing what you know today, if you could go back, what's that lesson learned? If you think about before you started raising capital, what do you wish you knew back then that you know today, and what advice you might give somebody else that is in the place that you were when you were raising capital to help you continue to grow and expand your business?
One of the things that I learned about raising capital is that you have to be so it's hard because, if you look at the statistics of how many people try to raise and how many do it successfully, it's kind of daunting and it's discouraging. The reality is that your odds are not something that you have no control over. It's not like you're putting in, it's like you're buying a lottery ticket here. You very directly control how likely it is that you're going to get funded through a myriad of ways. But because of those odds, a lot of people forget that it's not a one-sided conversation. When you start to have some success and you start to get offers from people, you'll quickly realize that you actually have to make decisions. Now, this seems like a good problem to have, but it's still a very real problem. You have to be able to figure out which VC or other type of investor I want to work with. And I would caution people not to take the first offer they get without really knowing that VC. I would ask them a lot of questions, get a sense for them. Is this, especially if they're going to be on your board, is this somebody that you like working with? Because a board member is almost harder to get rid of than a spouse, right? Like it's probably more difficult than a divorce to get rid of, to separate from a board member. You're going to be working with them for a very long time. And we've been very lucky, knock on wood, haven't had any issues where we try to get rid of any board members or anything. But we've not had that issue because we were very careful about who we took investment from, and really, really interviewed the people who were interviewing us. It was a two-way pitch. They were like, this is what we do. If you're interested, cool. But if you are interested, I need to know about you. I don't need to know if this is money that we want to take. Not all money's created equally. I mean, money's created equally, but a dollar's a dollar. But the partner you're going to work with, that's really what is going to define success, at least as much as the amount of money that you raise. So I think that's the main lesson that I've taken away.
Yeah, and that's common. You hear the notion that finding money isn't always good money. The best money is one that it's additive beyond the scope of what the money is. To your point, having a quality board member, somebody who's added to the business that can support its future strategic objectives. I think you sound as if you're pretty much on par with that as well, is that they have to be additive in other ways.
Yeah.
Right. Beyond just the itself.
And you have
is there anything that you would have, sorry, go ahead.
You have to get along with them. I mean, if they drive you crazy and they hate you and they drive you nuts, then you're really not going to have a good relationship. It sounds silly, but it's a real criteria.
And to your point, you're stuck in a bad marriage, right? Exactly. But even worse, you're really stuck in a bad marriage. That's great. Was there anything you would have done differently based on your capital raising efforts in the past? Is there anything that you think you would advise people to do differently based on some of those lessons learned, if you will?
I mean, there are some small tactical things I would have done differently. Like we started the company as an LLC for cost reasons. This was a company that I largely funded out of pocket at the beginning. It was an experiment. Didn't know we were going to be raising money, so we started as an LLC. And looking back, we eventually converted to a Delaware C corporation. I would have done that from the beginning. Now, if I had to do it all over again, I would have just bitten the bullet, spent the extra bit of money and time, and done that from the start. There's some little tactical things like that. I really think that when it comes to the overall, like the macro lessons that you learn from this, or even especially actually, I would say the macro nuanced lessons, right? Like how to pitch something, how to present something to somebody. It's something that it's at least as much of an art as it is a science at the end of the day. And anybody who tells you otherwise is a missing part of the equation, because people make decisions emotionally and then they justify them rationally later, right? So people who really, that's actually a good thing, because if you're raising money from people who only look at you like an Excel sheet entry, right? They're going, and a lot of VCs do that. I can tell, I can almost hear the check box marks going into some box somewhere when they're asking questions. It's much better, though, if you have somebody who's bought into the concept, bought into what you're doing. Early on, they're bought into you, right? Especially being bought into you because there's not much more of a team around you. It's really important that you find somebody who is not only cognitively on the same level as you about what you're trying to achieve, but also emotionally on the same level about how exciting that is. Because if they're not into it, they don't think it's a cool thing. They don't think it's exciting. They're inevitably going to put less energy, less time, and less creativity into it. And to your point you made earlier, not all money is equal. People, you want someone who's going to be additive, as you said. they're only going to be additive long term and effectively if they're thinking about your company outside of hours. One thing I really like about our board actually is that I get contacted a lot about things that they notice on like Twitter, or they'll look at a new model on our website, be like, "Oh, check this thing out! This is so cool!" Or, "Hey, someone uploaded something, but it seems like it's glitching." When the product was new, they were really curious. They were really invested, not only in a literal sense, but also in an emotional sense, and in a psychological sense. They really wanted this to work out. This was something that mattered to them as much as it matters to us, and that's something that's rare and very important to find.
Yeah, good point. And can you tell me a little bit about what a typical implementation looks like when they buy your product?
It's really up to the customer and how they have things set up. So we are a SaaS cloud platform. We used to have an on-prem version. What we found was that even the Department of Defense, which is a customer of ours, they eventually went over to the cloud. The cloud, no matter, I know that some people are going to disagree with me on this. Some people won't like hearing it, but very, very, very few companies can honestly say that their on-premise IT infrastructure is more secure than one of the major few cloud vendors, as long as you have things set up correctly. That typically is going to give you a better, not only a better deal, but a better security infrastructure. So we've decided to move everything over into a cloud environment, and that seems like it's helped in a lot of ways. I mean, there are some companies that are slow to adopt because of that. They're conservative when it comes to the cloud, but overall, it means that we can deploy a lot faster. So if somebody wanted to have an environment set up, we could set it up in minutes. The question is, what about putting all their models in? Well, we've made the ingestion process pretty seamless and pretty easy. Where it can take a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit, maybe like worst case scenario, a couple of weeks, as if you have like a PLM, environment that this has to connect into. We have an API for that, but that just requires a little bit of handholding to get that. It requires a little bit of custom work from our end or from the third party or from the customer, depending on the situation, to get that connected. But typically, if somebody said, "Look, I have a need for this right now. I have models ready to go," or at least they're in a place that you can easily access, we can start today.